Have you ever wondered what happens when love, money, and power come together in the lives of women beside the richest men on earth? What choices they make, not just as wives but as leaders, thinkers, innovators, world shapers. This isn't just a story about wealth. This is a story about influence, about the rise of women who walked beside billionaires and in many ways stepped into the spotlight themselves. This is the story of the rise of billionaire wives. What does it take to live in a world where every decision has global consequences, where your partner's success opens doors, but your own voice must rise above the noise? Stay with me, because the journey we're about to take is personal, powerful, and full of lessons for women, for men, and for anyone who wants to understand how real influence works today. 1. Miriam Adelson's. Imagine being thrust into a world you barely asked for, yet rising to become one of the most powerful people behind the scenes in global politics. That's the world of Miriam Adelson. A trained physician, Miriam could have spent her life caring for patients. But destiny had a much bigger plan. When she stood beside her husband, Sheldon Adelson, the casino tycoon who built Las Vegas Sands into a global empire, she didn't just inherit wealth. She inherited responsibility. She didn't simply become a billionaire wife. She became a guardian of legacy, a major political donor, and a strategic voice in shaping policy in two countries, the United States and Israel. But here's the question that makes her story unforgettable. What does it mean to hold that kind of influence? Not for yourself, but in service of your values. She took her platform not just to preserve wealth, but to push for causes she believed in. That power changed elections and conversations at the highest levels. And that's the first lesson of this journey. Influence isn't about money alone, it's about what you choose to support with it. 2. Rafaela Aponte Diamant. Now let's take you across oceans, onto massive container ships that slice through waves all around the world. Meet Rafaela Aponte Diamant, one half of the founding force behind the Mediterranean Shipping Company. You've probably never heard her name, but chances are something she helped build carried the things you use every day. Rafaela was not a silent partner. She was there at the beginning, helping grow MSC from a modest startup into one of the largest shipping companies on the planet. Think about that for a moment. Behind every product we use, from the clothes we wear to the phones in our pockets, there's a journey across oceans. And Rafaela's company manages those voyages. She might be called a billionaire wife, but the reality is much deeper. Her legacy is in movement, in the invisible pulse of global trade. So ask yourself, does influence only show up in the spotlight, or is it most powerful when it's quietly steering the world? 3. Priscilla Chan. Now let's shift to a story of compassion, vision, and impossible goals. Priscilla Chan wasn't born into Silicon Valley. She wasn't part of the tech elite. She became one of the most powerful philanthropists of this century, simply by combining two things: heart and a plan. Married to Mark Zuckerberg, she could have lived comfortably, behind the scenes, but she chose something much bolder. Together, they founded the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, not a charity, but a force determined to solve the world's toughest problems. Diseases that cripple families, education systems that fail children, communities desperate for opportunity. Priscilla didn't just write checks, she asked hard questions. What if we could end disease? Not just treat it, but cure it. What if we could give every child a fair chance at success? She didn't just imagine solutions, she invested in them, and that's what makes her story so inspiring. Influence isn't about maintaining comfort, it's about using your power to change the odds for everyone else. 4. Anne Wojcicki. Next we head into the world of science and personal discovery. Anne Wojcicki, co-founder of 23andMe. Now here's a woman who didn't just marry into success, she built success of her own. What started as an idea to put your health and ancestry in your hands, turned into a global company that transformed how we understand our bodies. Imagine buying a kit, sending in a sample, and suddenly unlocking secrets about who you are, your roots, your risks, your health. Anne didn't just change a market, she changed the way millions of people see themselves. And when you think about it, her story asks a deeper question. What if knowing ourselves better is the greatest power of all? Because influence doesn't always roar, sometimes it speaks in whispers, in the quiet revelation that changes how we view our own health, our past, and our future. 5. Salma Hayek Pinault. We move now into the world of art, culture, and relentless spirit. Salma Hayek Pinault, actress, advocate, partner in one of the most powerful luxury empires on earth. But her story isn't about fame or fashion, it's about identity. Salma didn't become someone else when she married into wealth. She brought her voice, her history, her courage, and amplified them. She stood up for women's rights in Hollywood when it wasn't popular. She told stories that mattered. She fought for representation. Her influence doesn't come from money, it comes from authenticity. And that's the lesson her life offers. True influence is not about being seen, it's about being heard for who you are. 5. Salma Hayek Pinol. We move now into the world of art, culture, and relentless spirit. Salma Hayek Pinol, actress, advocate, partner in one of the most powerful luxury empires on earth. But her story isn't about fame or fashion, it's about identity. Salma didn't become someone else when she married into wealth. She brought her voice, her history, her courage, and amplified them. She stood up for women's rights in Hollywood when it wasn't popular. She told stories that mattered. She fought for representation. Her influence doesn't come from money, it comes from authenticity. And that's the lesson her life offers. True influence is not about being seen, it's about being heard for who you are. 6. Helene Mercier-Arnault. Next we meet a woman whose world is filled with beauty and expression, and whose influence flows through cultural institutions. Helene Mercier-Arnault is a celebrated pianist and spouse to one of the richest men in fashion, Bernard Arnault. But she isn't just a figure in luxury circles, she's an art ambassador, someone who believes deeply in bridging the world of creativity with the power of business. Through her patronage of music and the arts, she helps preserve heritage, elevate artists, and create experiences that touch millions. In her world, influence isn't calculated in dollars, it's measured in impact. Impact on culture, on creativity, on the human spirit. Her story asks us, can influence be beautiful and powerful at the same time? The answer, in her life, is a resounding yes. 7. Lucinda Southworth. Now imagine someone who rarely seeks the spotlight, but whose presence steadies one of the world's greatest innovators. That's Lucinda Southworth. She's married to Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, one of the people who changed the way humanity stores knowledge, connects, and explores. Lucinda doesn't seek headlines, she doesn't post about memoirs or ventures, but in her quiet world, influence lies in support, in balance, in grounding someone whose ideas move faster than most of us can imagine. And here's a truth that her life quietly offers. Sometimes influence isn't loud, it's the steady force that keeps brilliance from burning out. 8. Nicole Systrom. Let's turn now to a woman driven by purpose, not profit. Nicole Systrom stands at the intersection of technology, sustainability, and investment. She could have settled into luxury and comfort, but she chose a different path. She founded a clean energy investment firm, backing ideas that fight climate change and protect the future of the planet. In Nicole's world, influence is about responsibility. Responsibility to our children, to our planet, to the legacy we leave behind. And her story forces a question we all must face. What kind of future are we investing in? Because influence without purpose is simply noise. Purpose with influence that changes the world. 9. Nikita Khan. Here's a woman who defies easy categorization, someone who blends business with compassion. Nikita Khan isn't defined by the wealth of her partner, Oracle's Larry Ellison. She defined herself through advocacy, especially in animal welfare and conservation. She took personal passion and turned it into impact, using her resources to protect the vulnerable. Her influence reminds us of something profound. Power without kindness isn't strength, but power with compassion becomes legacy. And in her story we see how influence can be a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. 10. Yelena Baturina. Lastly, we meet one of the most intriguing figures in business history. Yelena Baturina, once married to a major political figure, she didn't fade into the backdrop. Instead, she launched her own industrial empire, building one of Russia's largest construction and investment companies. Her rise wasn't easy, it was combative, it was public, it was demanding, and through it all she proved something important. Influence isn't given, it's taken, it's built piece by piece. Her life throws down a challenge to all of us. When faced with obstacles, do you shrink or do you rise? When people hear billionaire wives, they often imagine glamour, parties, privileges. But the real story is deeper. It's about women who took influence and used it with purpose. Women who asked big questions, initiated real change, and transformed their platforms into power with meaning. So let me ask you one final question. What would you do if you had influence? Not for attention, but for impact. Would you build? Would you fight? Would you care? Would you be inspired? The legacy of these women shows us that influence isn't a position in life. It's a decision, and your decision right now may be the start of your own rise. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.